All right. Well, hello, 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 hello out there. How's everybody doing? It's everybody's favorite conservative in New York, Christopher Wright, here to present you with another of my weekly local election series, episode 4 to be exact. And I got a very special guest with me today. I got a New York State Assemblyman. His name is John Salka. I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce who he is, give you a little background, and we'll go from there. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris. Thanks for having me. And as you mentioned, I'm the New York State Assemblyman of the 121st District. That runs about 93 miles from the south side of Oneida Lake in Madison County down through Otsego County and also the southern part of Oneida County. It's 35 towns. We have some cities, we have some villages, we have some hamlets. So there's a lot of diversity in the 121st.
Oh, excellent, excellent. And I see you were elected in 2018. Can you tell us about what motivates you to run for state assembly?
Well, I started way back in the early 2000s by serving on the school board of our local school, Brookfield Central. Okay. And after about 3 years on the board, I became president for 4 and decided to notch it up a bit and run for town supervisor. I was elected back in 2008. I served 11 years on the as a supervisor in the town of Brookfield, and by charter in Madison County, if you serve as a town supervisor, you're also on the county board. And I had the honor of chairing a number of committees: planning, economic development. I served as the vice president of the Madison County Board of Health because I have a medical background. And I thought it would be something that would be interesting, it would be fascinating to take that up even a higher notch and run for the New York State Assembly. So I actually ran the first time in 2014. And then ran again in 2016. Unfortunately, we didn't prevail in those 2 elections, although we came very close. But, they say persistence is the key to success. I ran again in 2018, and we were finally successful.
Oh, excellent, excellent. And before you were on the county board and everything, what were you do business-wise as a business profession before that?
Well, my medical license is I'm a licensed respiratory therapist, registered respiratory therapist in New York State, and I've been doing that pretty much since about 1981. I did take some time out to run my own business for about 9 years. I was an employer. It was a construction type business. We built chimneys, cleaned chimneys, so forth and so on. So I developed a pretty acute awareness of how difficult it is to conduct a business in New York State. So with the medical background, with the experience in running a business, plus the experience in education, school board, town supervisor, county legislator, I thought this is a great basis for taking this type of effort to Albany. And that's what I've done. That's what I've done. So done a lot of work to get here.
Oh, no, I totally understand that. It makes sense now. I can see how the connection with your, as a respiratory therapist and having a business here in New York State can kind of prepare you for, being in Congress here in New York as well, because it's very complicated, the business world here in New York State. A lot of people from out of state don't realize that New York is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, you got that right, Chris. And as a matter of fact, when I talk to people, which I do quite frequently that are in business, I usually tell them, God bless you, for what you do to put food on your table, to employ people, to run a good business, just takes so much more effort, it seems, in New York State. Unfortunately, New York State is one of the least business-friendly environments in the country. And you would think with the level of sophistication we have here, we would be able to help businesses excel, be able to give them the motivation and the incentive to get bigger. And we, in my business, we were ready to add another crew to get bigger, like businesses do, employ more people. And it was workman's compensation that just beat us back with no claims whatsoever. We were paying over 44% workman's compensation rate. And at that point, it just doesn't seem like it's worth getting up every day and spending that kind of money to New York State to be able to run a business.
No, especially when you don't realize you can't really see where the money's going some of the time, especially with a mayor like ours and everything like that. It's kind of like, where's this money going? Jeez.
It's sad. It's sad. It really is. And I think you've seen this mass exodus out of New York that we've been seeing for a number of years, in particular since about 2010. And it just seems like we should be keeping our brain trust here, which is our young people. We should be keeping our businesses here, which employ people now more than ever. And we should have a more business-friendly environment and more business-friendly legislation coming out of Albany. But it seems to me that all there is regulations and more taxes and less incentive for these businesses, not only to stay, but for a business to start up. And it's kind of tragic in a way, because New York State is a wonderful place to live. I've been all over the country. I've lived all over. And New York State is a wonderful, wonderful place to live. It's my home, of course. I grew up in Utica, New York. But when I see these businesses that just continuously throw up their hands and they say, we just simply can't do it anymore. We just can't do it. That's a tragedy. That's tragic.
No, I absolutely agree. I totally do. And that's why, I started a movement personally on my end with the CRA to call Turn New York Red movement. And a big part of that movement is getting, politicians on the right side, the Republican side in the office here, because it's just sad what's seeing going on here in New York. It's like a great place to live. The economy here is, amazing. The business world here is amazing, but it's just kind of, we get the short end of the stick being the citizens here with the way the politicians govern here. And we really get mishandled.
Chris, and I tell this. I mean, we passed over probably close to 950 bills last year, and in the legislature when they were in session, at least. And not one of those bills cut taxes, cut red tape, cut regulations. Those bills were of the type that, unfortunately, we understand New York City and their needs, what they have to do to provide for their people. But one thing we've been continuously trying to drive home is we're not New York City. We're upstate New York, and we're all New Yorkers, but we do have different needs. We have a different environment, and we appreciate that environment. We appreciate, again, what the concerns are of our downstate colleagues and our downstate fellow New Yorkers. But one size does not fit all. What can work in Plattsburgh might not work in Manhattan. What might work I make the point. And this is probably being underscored now more than ever.
No, I totally agree with you. And that's why, it's so important now. I tell New Yorkers, to get out there and get register. Of course, you haven't registered yet, but vote for your local congressman on the Republican side, because it's now more important now than ever. Because I'm telling people, like, you can either complain and, kind of play the victim, or you can get out there and fight. And the best way to fight, in my opinion, in New York is just to vote for a lot of the local Republican politicians here, because I spoke with quite a few here so far, even with this weekly local election series I have. And there's a lot of people that, they're sick and tired of, how the route the city's been going. And, they got policies and ideas they want to get into office, but it's so difficult for, of course, Republican candidates to get elected here. So I think that's why it's the best thing to do, is trying to let people, educate people, and let them know how you guys can really benefit the citizens in the state right now, because we get the short end of the stick in so many ways.
Well, obviously we now have one party rule. We haven't had one party rule in quite a while, since I believe 2010, and that was a disaster. Look, Republican, Democrat, whatever, one party rule is not a healthy situation. There's no check and balance. And, I'm out there every day, and we're in full campaign mode, and I love campaigning. This is my 12th campaign, and I just love it. It's a great opportunity. I'm blessed to be able to go out to such a wonderful community and talk to good people. But every single day, I notice that the level of anxiety is getting higher and higher. People are becoming very, very concerned about their future, their family's future, the ability of their children to go to school safely, whether or not they're going to have their jobs. And of course, COVID has thrown a huge monkey wrench into it. So, the anxiety, the angst out there is becoming more and more elevated. And of course, my message is we need to vote. We need to get out there. We need to stand behind our Republican and our conservative candidates, because when someone says to me, well, what can you do? You're just a Republican. The Democrats can do more. My response is this: look at what the Democrats have done. Okay? I mean, if you're a conservative, it's pretty scary to watch what happened last year. One of the first bills that came to the floor, they knew they finally had a chance of passing it through the Senate, was the Reproductive Health Act. Of course, I voted against that. These are onerous pieces of legislation that even shocked moderate Democrats. They were dancing in the aisles like there was a huge celebration that they just passed full-term abortion.
They lit the Freedom Tower pink that night.
Right, right. It was, I was new to the assembly. What a wonderful experience. You're in this historic chamber. You're voting on legislation that literally affects millions of people. What an awesome, awesome responsibility and awesome honor. But to see one of the first pieces of legislation that passed, being the Reproductive Health Act, was shocking to say the least. And I knew in my heart of hearts, we have a big fight in front of us, and we can't do it alone. And this is what I tell my constituents. This is what I tell the people that contact me that want to talk. I work for you. I can't do it alone. My ideas are what they are, but you elected me, so your ideas have to be mine. So I'm there to relay what you feel I should be doing on the floor of the assembly and every day as a legislator. So we've got a lot of work to do before we can turn this around, a lot.
I respect that, John. You're a man of the people, and that's what we need right now in New York, or people in Congress like yourself right now. And let me ask you, John, can you tell me? You mentioned your district a little bit earlier. Can you tell me a little bit more about your district? What areas it entitles, and just the area in general.
Yeah, again, and I said in one of our campaign videos not long ago that I'm a little biased, but I think I have the greatest assembly district in New York State. I've got a nice cross section of cities. We have Oneonta, Canastota, Cooperstown. I have 3 Hall of Fames in my district. I have the Boxing Hall of Fame, I have the Baseball Hall of Fame, and I also have the Abolitionist Hall of Fame in Peterborough, where they do a Civil War reenactment. So wow. There's a lot about the 121st district. There's a lot of history about it, and it's just a very, very agricultural, lots of farms. That's why it was so disappointing to see when they passed the farm bill last year and how much it's hurt our dairy farmers. So, and I hear it every day. But we have a district that it's a warm, welcoming district. The hills and the lakes and the environment around us is awesome. I live in a little place called North Brookfield, way up in the hills. We have 65 acres of land. We just built a house about 3 years ago, and it's serene, and we're really, really blessed to be where we are.
Wow, that sounds very amazing. In the city we don't get that kind of life here, so we're fighting over driveways over down here. So we're pretty stretched out here. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. You get the peace and quiet up there. But you mentioned the dairy farmers earlier. What kind of farming do you guys do in that area in general? Like the more, when it comes to farming, what are the main forms of it that are up there?
Good question. And most of what our dairy farms now are and have been for quite some time, although things aren't changing, most of our farms are dairy farms. Those dairy farms that used to be 40, 50, 60 head, just like everywhere else in the country, are becoming farther and fewer between, just because it's so tough of a market. Believe it or not, the price of milk in New York State is set by the price of cheese in Wisconsin. It's an incredibly complicated formula, and if I had a couple hours here, I might be able to explain it to you, but a lot of farmers don't even understand it, I think. But right now, what we're seeing is that these are men and women, families, second, third, fourth, fifth generation or more farmers that are now starting to, again, like businesses, throw up their hands and say, we simply can't do it anymore. I have a friend of mine who runs a good-sized dairy farm. I think he's milking about 3 now. But since the farm bill and the requirement that he pays overtime after 60 hours, his overtime, it's costing him $2,000 a week in additional expenses. And no matter how big you are, that hurts. We've pleaded with the governor and the majority to put an 18-month moratorium on the farm bill and let these farmers who have been really hammered by the COVID virus, give them a breather. Let them, because here's the nature of farming. It's all weather related. On a Sunday afternoon, if you can plant, you're going to plant. On a Tuesday evening, if you're going to hay, you're going to hay. Okay. The model that the Farm Bill tries to apply to farming as an industry just doesn't fit. So consequently, you have an industry that's unique in itself that can't to a bill that was written, all due respect, to downstate majority members. And we're starting to see the effects. We have more and more farmers that are going under. Suicide rates higher than it has been in a long time for farmers. And it's heartbreaking. And I drive by farms every single day. I usually, if I can, I got the time, I try to stop by and just kind of walk around the barn and talk a little bit about what's going on. And these are incredibly hardworking people. They're generous people. They're people that just want to continue what they know best to do, and that's to provide a quality service, quality food to the people of New York State and the whole world, if you look at it that way. So we're really concerned about what this farm bill is doing. We have a lot of tourists industry in my district. Of course, like I said, we have the Hall of Fame. What a wonderful, wonderful place that is. Even if you're not a baseball fan, you should visit the Hall of Fame because it's truly an inspirational American institution. And of course, my favorite sport, boxing. I have the Boxing Hall of Fame in Canastota, New York. So there's a lot to see here. We have beautiful lakes, clean water, clean air. It's just it's a wonderful place to grow up. And again, this is what it just bothers me so much that a lot of people are saying, I'd love to be able to stay here, but when I'm retired, I simply can't afford to live in New York State anymore. It's just not right.
No, it really isn't, John. Thank you for breaking that down for a lot of our listeners, because that's very important. What you said when it comes to the issues that dairy farmers are currently going through with the legislation being passed in New York, and that's also the history. There's like so much history in New York, not just in the city, but upstate has so much history. When you mentioned Cooperstown, that got my attention. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, and a lot of people know Cooperstown.
Sure.
That's American. That a lot of people know about. So, but let me ask you something else, John. There has been extreme legislation passed by the radical left Democrats up in Albany. We mentioned a couple of things earlier, like late-term abortion, also bail reform, and also, and the issues going on with the farming up there. What's going on in Albany these days, and do they have any more crazy plans to destroy the state, do you think?
That's a great question, because obviously, like I said, COVID has thrown a higher level of complication than we've ever seen. But the legislature should be back in session, regardless of whether or not it's Zoom, it's face-to-face, whether or not you elect to go and sit on the floor of the assembly or sit in your office to wait to go down for a vote. The legislature hasn't been in session in weeks, and we should be back in session. We should be legislating. There are very important bills that need to be addressed. We have a deficit right now, and if the federal government doesn't step in, we're talking a $30 billion deficit. That's almost insurmountable. Even before the COVID crisis, though, our deficit was $6.5 billion, with $4 billion of it being Medicaid. Now, I had the honor this year of being appointed to the Health Committee. It was something that I really wanted to be on, and I was able to get on. And there's a great chairman, Richard Gottfried. We've had some great conversations, him and I. We differ on single-payer health care and certain issues like that, but it's good, respectable dialogue. But right now, we're waiting for the legislature to come back into session. And here's one major reason why we should. Back when we passed a bill that funded COVID, the fight against COVID, about 40 or 45 million, attached to that was a bill, or was a part of the bill, that gave the governor expanded powers in the time of an emergency. Well, shortly after that, the emergency was declared. We agreed to that only under the caveat, or only actually under the requirement of the bill, that we come back in 30 days and we thoroughly review those additional powers, and the governor would have to justify what he did. The legislature never went back into session for months. So the governor got away with his executive orders and his runaway power and managed to do whatever he wanted to. I have a feeling he would have done it anyway. But people say to me, why did you vote for that? Number one, I voted because at that point, the COVID crisis was just starting to give us an idea how bad it was going to be. So badly needed funding needed to be provided. And like I said, we were supposed to review those powers within 30 days. It's been months and months now, and the governor still has runaway power, and the legislature refuses to come back into session. When they did finally come back into session, believe it was back in June, all they did was pass anti-law enforcement bills. Not one mention of infrastructure, not one mention of reining in the gun power, not one mention of the Medicaid crisis, nothing. It was all anti-law enforcement. And the second time they came in, again, no mention of the priorities that are affecting every New Yorker every day. This legislature is negligent in its duties to be able to carry out its mission, and that's to represent the people of the state of New York and pass laws and bills that work for the people of the state of New York, and it's not being done. And I have to admit, it's very frustrating.
No, I totally agree. What's going on? What's trying to pass here in New York, and the stuff that, like, I don't really know who they're representing anymore. I mean, I know that there's a radical left out there, being especially in the city, but I just can't see, like, who do you really think you're benefiting with, like, stuff like bail reform and defunding the police, and it's just legislation that any citizen is not going to benefit off these things they're trying to push through, and so I'm just, like I said, the only thing I can think of is, like, we got to get people in there like yourself who working hard right as we speak, but we just got to get as many as possible, because I don't see anything there's any way turning around otherwise, and it's pretty.
No, I don't, Chris. I mean, if we don't get to control the Senate again, we're going to have another 2 years of runaway power, runaway legislation. Look, the Republican majority, well, it hasn't been the Republican majority since the early 70s. We lost that years and years ago. We have an overwhelming majority, all right? And unfortunately, if you look at the political map, a majority of that majority is downstate. And again, like I said, our needs are different. There's no doubt about it. I think even they would admit, but sometimes I just feel like they don't care. They don't care. And again, their job is to represent their constituents. And if their constituents are in Brooklyn or Staten Island or somewhere downstate, that's fine. I understand that's their job. But my job is to fight for and advocate for my constituents in the 121st district.
No, I totally understand. I totally understand. And then we appreciate your service to us here in the state of New York. We know we need a lot more politicians out there like you fighting for us, because it seems like, especially here in the city, that it's just no light at the end of the tunnel at all. And it's just, we got even the point we're getting the radical leftists in now, like the AOCs of the world, and the people are just like, this is what we get now. Like, we've really gotten this, this craziness radical, and we got people that want to take after de Blasio was out of office that want to replace him on the left that are just even more radical than he is. So, it's just, like I said, that's why I want to get so many people as possible in there on the right to let people know they can see on a local level, hey, we are benefiting for having Republicans, and maybe we should try it on a mayor level, governor level, and so on, and it's really helped turn this state around like we did with Giuliani a few years back. But what I want to ask you now, John, is, you mentioned a few things earlier, but I kind of just want to touch base with you. What have you been working on for Albany in the past few years while you were assemblyman?
Well, of course, I'm a big advocate of law enforcement. I've been endorsed by a number of the major law enforcement organizations. Today, we were just endorsed by the New York State Police Investigators Association. So, I mean, very, very proud to get that. We've had first of a series of rallies to support not only our law enforcement, but our first one, our 911 responders, EMS, firefighting services. I worked in a lot of emergency rooms over the years, so I worked right alongside these men and women who bring patients in, firefighters who brought in critically burned patients. I mean, we got there's a good camaraderie, if you will, with people in that community. So, and that was what was disappointing about the bail reform. One question in a series of questions that was posed in the debate on bail reform was, how many law enforcement communities did you reach out to before you decided this was the wording of what bail reform was going to be? Unfortunately, it was minimal to none. Did you reach out to our district attorneys? No. Did you reach out to our police chiefs? Well, no. Did you reach out to the rank and file cop on the beat who's going to have to suffer the consequences of bail reform? No. How, God's name, can you pass a bill that affects so many people, not only in law enforcement, but regular folks, affects their safety? How can you pass a bill without asking them what they think about it? to me, that was extremely negligent of someone's responsibility. They have the power to write a bill, and yet they don't even stay in touch with the people it's going to affect. So that's one of my advocacies. Of course, we're advocating for our farmers, trying to make sure that our farmers just sometimes have an ear to bend, to be able to talk to be able to say, this is what's going on. And that's half the battle sometimes, Chris, is just it's not a battle, but just to listen. And of course, being in medicine, one of the things that we're very, very concerned about, and I hear this from my hospital administrators, is that Medicaid reimbursements aren't what they should be. We all know about the nursing home crisis. We all know about the unnecessary deaths that occurred in our nursing homes. Being on the health committee and the aging committee, I'm waist deep in that issue. We want to get to the bottom of it. These people and their families deserve answers on what happened in the nursing homes. So these are some of the issues that we think are very, very important to address right now. And of course, schools. I stay in regular touch with my school superintendents. I have 15 school districts in my assembly district, and the common message that I'm getting right now from our school superintendents is no guidance from the state, no supports from the state. They're just confusing the issue. And when they do issue a directive for compliance, the schools comply and they set the bar higher. One school superintendent told me today, I'm convinced they're setting us up for failure. Wow. So, yeah. And these are not minor issues. These are major, major issues.
Okay, so John, can you that last thing you just said about the compliance? Can you say that a little bit, go in a little more detail about that again, if you don't mind?
Yeah, okay. Here's how they manage to complicate things. I had a school superintendent tell me today that just by accident, he managed to go on because he had another Zoom conference. Just by accident, he found out that there was a Zoom conference with the Department of Health at 1:30 that afternoon. So he had a 2.5-hour notice by accident that there was a meeting. In that meeting, they discussed a whole list of more compliance issues that had to come up, and they had to be adhered to by 3 o'clock that afternoon. So obviously, something like that is virtually impossible. In my district, I've got a lot of small schools, 300, 400 kids. Right now, some of the regulations that are being handed down by the Department of Health, which I think is horribly mismanaged, some of these regulations and guidelines are so confusing, they're so impossible to comply with, that school administrators are starting to get very discouraged about whether or not they can even do the job anymore. And these are the people that are on the front lines. These are the people talking to the PTAs, to the school boards, to the people that come to the schools with their children, demanding answers now on how you're going to keep my child safe, or basically, how are you going to educate my child? And the guidance from the state simply isn't there. So we have our hands full trying to answer questions, but we get very little information ourselves out of education, out of the Department of Health, and especially out of the governor's office.
It's interesting you say that, John, because I got a friend of mine. She's currently in the school district in the Bronx here, and she's telling me, like, this is their second day at work. The staff, school staff goes in a week before the students, so she's at work now, and she's telling me these first 2 days of work, the crazy rules she has to accept. And these meetings they have where they spit these crazy rules to this person, and she has to listen to them. And she's like, "This is crazy. They expect us to do this. They expect us to follow every little thing. Like if they travel to certain states and if they come back and don't get quarantined properly, they can get fired, and just stuff that I'm like, they're really invading her privacy. It seems like, and it's just like stuff that I'm like, is this borderline? It's like almost borderline illegal to conduct business this way." It's school, and I know it's not technically like a typical 9 to 5 kind of business, but it's just strange how evasive they've been to this young lady, and the crazy things she's telling me she's been having to the crazy hurdles, the loop she's been hopping in through this stuff.
It's insane, Chris, and we have a friend who does one-on-one instruction, and she told us we saw her at an event Sunday evening. And she said that now she is required, when she sees her student, and one-on-one is one teacher, one aide, or one student, that she has to wear goggles, a face mask, a face shield, gloves, and gown in order to
What?
be compliant with the one-on-one regulation, the one-on-one. This is absolutely, how can you possibly teach a child? And my wife and I had to navigate, I should say, through the special education system with my son. And it was 12 years of very, very challenging times. But one thing we learned about children with special needs is there's got to be a bond set up between whoever their teacher is or their aide is and that student. This is very, very important. We have concerns that those bonds are not going to be able to be set up when someone's got 2/3 of their face covered up with a face mask.
Wow.
So, I mean, these are things that, again, been there, done that type of experience that I've had, knowing children with autism who already have social issues, and when you can't set up a bond to establish that social connection with that child, you're almost doing more harm than good sometimes. So we don't know how that child is going to be, how they're going to be able to deal with a teacher who has a face mask on, or a classroom that's getting disinfected every 30 minutes. Or asking a child to sit 6 feet apart in a cafeteria. Kids are social animals. This is what being a kid is all about. So what we're doing now is we are breaking down those social elements, not only immediately what the effects are going to be, but what are the long-term effects going to be? So we don't exactly even know how to prepare for this. Look, COVID put challenges to everyone. It's been a learning curve for everybody, I have to admit. But it just seems that a lot of what is coming out of Albany, what is coming out of Department of Health, what is coming out of state ed is so confusing. It doesn't seem like the left hand knows what the right hand is doing here. And they're not talking to the right people before they come up with these decisions. And we can't let the bureaucrats run things. We have to let the people run things. And that's what I'm pushing for. More public input into everything that I do.
Well, Tom, I totally respect you for doing what you're doing, Tom. And, thank you for letting that information out there when it comes to this, special education in the school system right now, because it's funny that you kind of mentioned that, because the young lady I'm speaking about, she's a teacher's aide and she works in special education. And she was the one who was complaining to me about all the hurdles they're having her jump through just for her to do her job. And, this woman, she's an amazing woman. And she's great with children, and she loves what she does. And I seen her, with kids in the past, and like I said, I can only imagine her coming in with a gown on and a face mask, and the person that she is, just it would drive her crazy. And she's, like I said, she can tell right now. Just speaking to her, she's very upset with what she's going through right now with her work. So I'm sure that's what you're talking about is part of what she's hearing at work when these weekly and these daily meetings they're having on Zoom, where they're letting all these rules. She's like, every day there's new rules, she says. So
exactly, and that's what I'm hearing from my school superintendents. Not to mention the fact that now, of course, the governor's holding back 20% of the funding for schools in New York State. This is absolutely devastating. I was told months ago by a group of my superintendents that we might be able to deal with a 5% cut. 7 to 10 is going to be close to devastating. 20% would be completely devastating. And lo and behold, the governor's holding back 20% of their funding. So they've already incurred huge expenses in trying to comply with all the COVID regulations. Now they're taking a 20% cut. That's just not doable. Okay. And again, I don't know who's making up these decisions. I don't know who's advising the governor on what we should be doing as far as education and healthcare, but I don't think he's getting the right message. So, and he's definitely not getting the message from me, because I really probably think they could care less what I think. But sooner or later, and I think sooner than later, there's going to be issues that are going to have to be addressed now. We can't shelve them. We can't make conference out of them. All right, they have to be addressed, and they have to be addressed ASAP. And I don't know if Albany's got the fortitude for that. That's my concern. Again, like I said, being in Albany is such an incredibly honorable thing to be able to do. When I walk around the halls of the New York State Capitol, it's just, again, it's so inspiring. But where, of course, I'm most comfortable is in my district. Traveling around, talking to the people of my district, making sure that they realize I'm there for them, but I need them as much as they need me, probably even more for that matter. So we every day pound home in between myself and my staff, pound home the fact that we're here to serve the people of our district and all of New York State for that matter. We have people that contact us with problems like unemployment. They weren't in our district, but we'll try to help them anyway because they're in need. And so I'm hoping that the positive spin out of all this crisis is that we're going to be able to find that we have to work together. We have to take the partisanship. We've got to shelve it. We've got to take the egos, put those on the shelf, and work together to make sure that the paycheck that I get that's signed by the state of and the taxpayers of the state of New York, that I'm earning that paycheck and that I'm making sure that I'm there for them.
No, I totally agree with you. And like I said, we need more patriots like you, John, in that office, man, because you're fighting for the people, man, and that's what we need right now because that's the biggest issue right now. I said, like you just mentioned, is the egos in politics in New York. It's insane. Like I said, they'll put votes over lives. It seems like here. So it's one of those things. Like we need to get people who remember what they're here to do for the people. They're here to serve. And it just seems, it seems like you don't see that anymore when you see congressmen, especially local here in New York, here in the state of New York. And it's just good to hear somebody who's in there now that's fighting for the people. And, we're definitely doing what we can to get your voice heard, John. And that kind of leads me to a little bit to my next question, which is, upstate New York is very different from downstate, particularly New York City. What are the major concerns of your constituents whom you represent pretty much?
Well, the major concern, of course, is safety. Again, like I mentioned, the anxiety, the levels of anxiety are getting higher and higher. Our restaurants are starting to fold up because they just simply aren't going to be able to do outside dining in the wintertime. We have some pretty harsh winters in upstate New York, okay? And, they're very concerned about it. And they're concerned because, it's no man's land where I live, as a matter of fact, in the wintertime. But they're also concerned about their safety in regards to the bail reform law that has let thousands and thousands of criminals either back out on the street or just be able to reoffend because they know that they're going to be able to get right back out on the street. This is something that's a huge issue. But of course, right now, the overwhelming issue is with the virus and making sure that people stay safe. And, we recommend, of course, highly recommend social distancing. If people want to make the choice to wear a mask to protect themselves, we feel that that's their choice. So we are trying to calm some fears, if you will, by getting out and talking to as many people as we can. And, of course, the local economy. Local economy is a huge concern. That's people's jobs. Right now, because of everything that's been going on for this past several months, sales tax is way, way down. As a county supervisor, I knew how much we depended on sales tax because 98% of our budget was mandated by the state. So the sales tax really kept our operational costs going. So that's very, very important. Roads, infrastructure, rural medical care, broadband, the lack of. Here's an issue now because we have such poor broadband. Students that want to learn via virtual, because of the poor broadband, a lot of them can't connect with their schools.
Oh.
So what they're doing, the schools are doing a great job setting up these mobile hotspots. But here's an example. A mother called me from outside of Lawrence, which is in Otsego County, small town. She has 3 children. She's a single mom, 1 computer. She has to put those kids in a car and drive them to a hotspot for them to do their schoolwork.
Wow.
So this is a major, and here's the thing you need to remember, Chris, about this whole thing. These issues have been simmering for a long, long time. The pandemic just brought them. All the weaknesses we had in the system, all the issues that we really needed to face, now are staring us right in the eye. We need to take care of things like this, and we need to take care of them. If we expect to go to school, to learn, to be provided with health care, to be provided with a safe environment where they don't have to worry about crime, we need to address these issues, and we need to address them now. And I don't think that's coming out of Albany.
Wow. That's insane. I mean, I can only imagine how hard it is for that mother. It's, you got to take care of your family, make sure everything's correct financially and, a safe home as well to live in. And then you got to, worry about making sure your kids are taken care of when it comes to learning and doing their schoolwork. And I can imagine like a bad wintry day getting out there and have to go to one of those mobile hotspots just to, help your kid complete some schoolwork late at night. Like that's insane. Just, people don't think about stuff like that.
I grew up with a single parent mom, and I watched her work 2 jobs sometimes, just to get, provide us with meals, getting surplus food, sometimes holiday dinners were because of the donation from the local church. Okay. So, we had it tough, but she always made sure we had clean clothes, sent me to a Catholic school, and make sure that food was always on the table. And now I look at what some of the challenges are that these single parents have to face. And I say to myself, gosh, I just wish you luck, because it's so tough just to do it regularly. And now with the set of circumstances that we have now, it's almost, like I said, insurmountable. But there's a lot of inner strength out there. I noticed that people are tough. They're durable, if you will. They're vigilant. And I'd like to say we're going to get through this, and we are. But I'm afraid of what's going to happen in the meantime, and the effects that are going to be caused by this that are going to be around for a long, long time. Now, like as a community, as a state, as a nation, we have some pretty big challenges ahead of us. But again, so you say I'm working. It's nice to see you working. Fighting for the people. I'm fighting with the people. Okay, I'm fighting with the people because I'm just an average guy. Okay, not a wealthy man. We live within our means, of course. We enjoy life a bit, of course, but I fight along with those people, not for them, and for them. But I can't do that without them standing aside of me and fighting this battle.
I totally agree, John. I totally agree. I like that, fighting with the people, not for the people, with the people. You're side by side, and that's what fellow patriots. That's what patriotism is all about. That's why I'm a strong believer in getting people in office that aren't lifelong politicians or career politicians, just regular everyday people, because I feel that's going to represent the everyday people or everyday people. So
that's what our founding fathers. That's the way they wrote it. And it's a shame to see the Constitution being trampled on almost on a daily basis right now. It is. There's so many of our rights that we've given up just simply out of fear. And it's going to take, that's another thing, it's going to take a long time for us to reestablish our constitutional rights. And that can slip away in, like Ronald Reagan said, in one generation. In one generation, those rights can slip away. So we have to be very, very careful. It's a strong document, but it's also, in some respects, a very delicate document, and it's under threat. It's under serious threat right now. We have to stay extra focused on our constitutional rights.
I absolutely agree. You need to stay vigilant right now. That's the key. Yes, all right. So let me ask you, John, what is I mentioned earlier to you, what I'm doing to CRA, the Conservative Republican Alliance here. I found a group I founded here in New York City. And like I said, I recently had the Turn New York Red movement. I started with it and had a rally for a Turn New York Red rally. Do you think it's possible to turn New York red yourself? And if so, how much time do you think it will take for that to occur?
I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing things that are countering conventional wisdom. Okay, and the conventional wisdom almost throughout history of this country has been New York State tends to be more or less on the liberal side. But I believe that more and more are starting to say that the systems that we've had in place, the people that we've had calling the shots, the government that we have had that's telling us what to do really isn't working that well anymore. I think a lot more people than ever are more receptive to some radical changes in how New York State is governed. One bill that I'm a sponsor of is a bill that would set up what they call autonomous regions of New York State. It would set up an upstate region and a downstate region, basically. Essentially, a year ago, if I brought this up, people looked at me and they pretty said, that's a wacko idea. But more and more now, people are starting to say, that might be something that we could at least discuss, where in fact upstate is able to set its own set of rules, downstate its own set of rules, and those rules are part of what it takes to address the unique needs of that region. So this bill, which I think is very well written, we would like to at least get it to the floor of the Assembly and the Senate to discuss, to debate. And the point I was trying to make was there's a lot more people now that are starting to think that this should at least be discussed, because this underscoring the unique needs that each part of this state has. There's another bill that would separate 3 regions, New York, Long Island, and upstate. I think we might have a little bit better opportunity to debate just the 2 separate regions. And they're not even separate. It just means we want to govern ourselves. We want to be able to call our own shots. We want to be able to determine our own destiny. And that, I think, is human nature, that you want to be able to determine who you are, how you take care of your family, how you provide. And now, things that are not working in Albany are underscoring the fact that what they're saying now doesn't work for us anymore. Some people say we just ought to throw all the bombs out. And we've had that attitude once or twice in my life because they're so discouraged with the way things are going. But we need to look at a radically different way of doing things, because the way we've been doing them just isn't working anymore. It simply isn't working anymore. Look, we provide services and we still have I think we have the greatest state in the United States of America. But it's almost a little ironic that here we are in the greatest state in the country, and we still can't provide basic services to our people with disabilities, to our homeless, to our inner city kids, to the people that really matter, and we are abandoning them. If we had something in medicine, when there's some kind of mistake that's made or something happens, we do what we call a root cause analysis. We get right to the meat of why that happened, and we address it. I don't see anybody doing a root cause analysis of what's going on in New York and why we're not doing the job anymore. We need to do that. We definitely need to do that. And again, I don't see that coming out of Albany. I don't see that kind of discussion coming out of Albany. So now it's incumbent upon people like myself to get that discussion going and to keep it going. And I would hope your organization would be able to help.
Oh, definitely. We're all in this together. And like you said, that's the main reason I got this organization and built it, was to have a way to give backing to politicians who I felt were going to be strong candidates that would, fight with the citizens of the state, and, just do what I can on my end, because I can, of course, running's always maybe an option in the future, but I want to do something now where I can get out there and not be held back by just one position at the moment. I want to get out there and help multiple people, as many as I can, and help others, show them that they have the power to do so as well. And we can all do this together and really get a lot accomplished for the state. But it's going to take, united we stand kind of thinking. And I hopefully, and I'm thinking New York is getting to that point, because, I think a lot of us are getting very frustrated with what's going on with this it's been heading direction it's heading. It's just not benefiting a lot of people, and people are getting sick and tired. So I think it's time for us to kind of show people that there's another option out there, and it's not a bad option.
And Chris, the battle lines are being drawn. It's an election year. There's no doubt about it. I have one particular opponent, and we're diametrically opposed on issues, social issues. He endorses the SAFE Act. He endorses the Reproductive Health Act. Today he came out and endorsed bail reform. These are issues, the Climate Protection Act, which is going to cost billions and billions and billions of dollars, and there can be debated about how many jobs it's going to cost. I think it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of jobs. So it's going to come down to basically an ideological difference on what we think is best for the people of the state of New York. I'm using my experience, not only in Albany, but throughout the past 20 years on education and healthcare and business, and using that experience on what I feel is best in the best interest of the people of my district.
Okay. I totally respect that. I totally do. And I appreciate you being honest and straightforward with us, John. Like, just really appreciate it. But I want to ask you as well. I want to get a little, we've been talking politics for almost an hour now, and we touched up on a lot of different important subjects. So I kind of want to, get throw a little fun, little off-topic fun in there. And I know you spoke about Cooperstown earlier and, being a home of Hall of Fame for baseball and everything like that. Do you have favorite sports teams when it comes to baseball, football, a favorite boxer? I know you said you were a boxing fan earlier as well.
I'll tell you something. Like I said, boxing, and it was Muhammad Ali. Okay.
Oh man,
dance like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Yeah,
Carmen Basilio grew up in Canastota, New York. When I had my chimney business, I went over and looked at his mom's chimney. Boxing it's just a great technical sport. I had a cousin who tragically lost his life in Vietnam, but he was a Golden Gloves boxer. His name was Joey Martirano from Rome, New York, and when I go to the Boxing Hall of Fame, it's a complete thrill for me. And when they have the Hall of Fame weekend, and unfortunately they couldn't do it this year, but when they have the Hall of Fame weekend, if you're a boxing fan, you are you're in seventh heaven, okay? Because the big guys are there, Marvin Hagler, and just the guys that Sugar Ray,
Marvin Hagler and Sugar Ray. Oh yeah, those are the ones.
And also, if you're talking about fun stuff, I did a tour not long ago. I did the White Glove tour of the Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame, where you go down into the archives. And I held one of Babe Ruth's bats.
Wow.
You have to wear white gloves and booties, and it's all temperature controlled and humidity controlled. But you go into the archives, and they have these racks and racks of bats and accessories that some of the Harm Killebrew, like I said, Babe Ruth. You could I played the little baseball cards when I was growing up, so Carl Yastrzemski. And you know what it teaches you? It teaches you, too, how much baseball was as a part of American history. And during World War II, how baseball helped keep this country together. So, again, it's a fun district to live in. Like I said, with all the things you can see.
Now, you're selling me a lot, John. I got to make a trip upstate to where you're at very soon, man. I definitely will. I'm a history buff. And I've always been a sports guy growing up, so I'll definitely the Baseball Hall of Fame. That sounded really like a real exciting experience to be involved in.
You have an open invitation.
Oh, appreciate it, John. I appreciate it. All right, John. Well, let me ask you. We're getting close to the end of our interview now, and it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed the experience sitting down and talking with you this evening. But I want to ask you, for our listeners out there, for people out there, what's the best way for people to get started in local politics, in your opinion?
That's a great question, because the future of our politics is in our young people. And, I was older, of course, when I got involved, but I started out, we moved to this community back in 1990, and I wanted to get to know the community first. We had two children, in the community. And I started off as being on the a committee that was formed for a school project that they were proposing, because they had to get a certain amount of public input into that. So it was a good thing to start from the base. My advice is number one, become aware. Become aware of what is going on around you. We invited people from the local school to come to our town board meetings to be able to witness. And some of them thought it was kind of boring, and it can be kind of boring because it's a lot of procedures and processes. But it's very, very important to realize that you are going to be part of a process that is going to be able to decide on how to take care of people in your community. When you become involved in that, you get a certain amount of gratification. Not a high-paying job in a lot of respects, especially at the lower levels. School board, nothing, as a matter of fact. But you're able to become an integral part of your community and to be able to help those that a lot of times you literally grew up with, your neighbors. And to get that kind of experience as a basis and getting to know the issues, getting to know both sides of an issue, talking to people on both sides of an issue, and then, of course, ultimately to make a decision that's based on what you think is in the best interests of your community. And then you build from there. And again, I don't think people have I think they kind of lost the realization that public service is a wonderful, wonderful thing to be involved with. We'll have someone come in our office and they need help with their STAR exemption, or they need something fast. The small things begin to add up. As a matter of fact, it's really the small things in a lot of respects that really count. That you can help people on the street. You can help with their daily lives. You can help when in medicine, I learned one thing, that when people are sick, they're scared and they're hurting. And I'm thinking that right now we're seeing a lot of that. People are scared and they're hurting. And it's up to us as community leaders to assure them that we are going to help them in any way possible. Sometimes we're successful and sometimes we're not. But we'd like to be able to tell young people it's a great occupation. It's a great endeavor. It's a great way to spend your time with your community, with your family, and with other fellow community leaders. Because believe it or not, we can get a lot done.
I totally agree with you, John. Totally agree. Yeah. And I totally agree with you. Said also the young people are the future. Gen Z, especially the 20 and younger internet generation, I call them, very important to the future. And they seem like they're might be more aware than my generation, the millennials. They are my generation. I hate to say it, my peers, but man, a lot of us they're the ones in the street blocking freeways and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I'm hoping Gen Z can kind of slowly with their generation turn things around from a youthful perspective. So, I have faith in them. All right, John. But we're, last question, John, but I think it might be the most important one. How can people get involved with your campaign for re-election?
You can check out my website. It's Salka for Assembly at gmail.com. I believe. No, that's my email address. Salka for Assembly. Okay, that's my webpage. Gosh, we have so many addresses and that. But Salka for Assembly. Or you can reach out to me. I'll give you my number. It's 315-941-9207. That's my personal cell phone number. You're welcome to call anytime. And, we always need people to man the phones. We'll be doing a literature drop next week in certain parts of the district. And just to generate that enthusiasm. And believe me, I'll be 66 years old in November. Okay. I can get the enthusiasm going. Because like I said, we love campaigns because it's just a great opportunity to be able to tell people and show people who we are.
No, I totally hear you on that, John. It's been, I'm sure campaigning, like I enjoy campaigning myself. I've been on a few campaigns helping out different candidates who I, just been supporting, and just from a perspective of somebody who's supporting a candidate, it's exciting. So I can only imagine being the candidate themselves, I'm sure it's enjoyable.
It's wonderful. And on election day, when you've worked so hard for months and months, and that's that one day, I hope that you're going to be able to find out whether or not you were successful. It's amazing. It's amazing. But here's one last thing, Chris. Okay, sure. No matter what, and I've always said this, no matter how a campaign goes, I've always treated my opponents with respect. I beat a 28-year incumbent. Okay, and I always walk away, win or lose, with my dignity. And that's what the most important thing to me is.
And from man to man, I respect that a lot, John. That says a lot right there about your character. I respect that.
Thank you. It's humbling.
Yeah, you're welcome, brother. And keep doing what you're doing, John. I'm glad you're in there now fighting with us. And I'm looking forward for another few years of you fighting with us, because, we're going to do whatever it takes to get you back in there again, reelected this year, and, get the job done and keep moving this state forward, man, in a positive way.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time as well, John. You enjoy the rest of your evening, brother, and God bless everybody out there listening as well.
God bless you.
Thank you.